Hello everyone, welcome to this short session with Engineer Bello Tongo, who is the CEO of Tongston Entrepreneurship Holdings. And we have two very quick discussion points to have with him today, which is the African Investment Summit, which is going to be speaking on this month. And then there is the Teachers' Day and World Teachers' Day celebration, which is going to happen on 5th of October, but there is a webinar on the 28th of October. So let's stay tuned for all these interesting investment opportunities, as well as important points that teachers can learn. Okay. So thank you so much, Engineer Bello, for being on this session with us today. So the first question I'm going to ask is, why is Tongston so invested in teacher education and the integration of education, enterprise, media, and finance?
Yeah, thank you, Fatima. The reason why we are very much invested or focused on teachers is because for every human being, their capacity, their productivity, and their prosperity in life is as a result of an education that they have acquired, whether in formal school system or informal school system or at home, but generally mainly from the formal school system. And the individuals or professionals in charge of that impacting of education are actually the teachers. Mm-hmm. I always like to say that behind every successful school and every successful student is a great teacher. So that's why the capacity of the teacher needs to be right. The productivity of the teacher needs to be right, but also the prosperity of the teacher needs to be right. And this is why everything we do about entrepreneurial education or entrepreneurial thinking is mainly targeted towards teachers. And by the way, when I say teachers, I mean all educators from nursery, primary, secondary, tertiary, even professional trainers. They're all educators or teachers, in quote. So this is why we focus mainly on them. And obviously, if you know very well about the Tongston entrepreneurial thinking model or education model, is mainly tied to those four things that you mentioned. So this is why we're taking all of that and building those teachers to think that way, but also to perform that way.
Thank you so much, Engineer Bello. There's some very interesting things that you raised when you spoke on the wholeness of a teacher, integrating things like enterprise, business, finance, all that into education. I think that a lot of teachers have not thought about it that way. In fact, that brings me to my next question, because many teachers feel like entrepreneurial thinking does not fit in very nicely with the concept of education. I mean, we've heard things like, teaching should be a passion, a teacher's reward is in heaven, which is really funny. Teachers should only be invested in serving, teachers should only be invested in delivering good education. Yeah. So what is Tongston's position on this? Do you think that teachers are just, built to deliver these things that I mentioned?
Yes. Well, I'll address this question of yours in two ways. First is, yes, you said the job of the teachers are to impact and
right.
to serve, right? Or to basically benefit the student. But the teacher also needs to know or ask himself the question, is he really benefiting the students at the top capacity or the top requirement that those students need? That's the question. And if you look at the school system or what the teacher does, you'll see that many of the practices are tied towards academics and specifically to standardized exams performance. But both of us know, and the industry knows, and even the teacher knows to a certain extent that for that student to really perform at that top level, he needs industry, he needs entrepreneurial thinking or entrepreneurialism, or he needs everything to do with getting a job, setting up a business, making money, and all of that. So if that teacher really wants to answer that question as to whether he's doing justice to his job or this is duty of service,
right,
he should then think in the sense that, well, am I really putting all these competencies of getting a job, starting a business, making money, and all of that in my education, in the practice that I do in my students? That is the big question. And if the answer is no, then he knows that he will need that entrepreneurial thinking that we're talking about in order for all of it to be part of his teaching of any subject that he does. That's first. Number two is that whether you are a professor, you are a lecturer, you are any type of teacher or educator or educational institutions, you exist within an economic world. And what drives economic development is enterprise, whether it's in the non-profit space, in the private sector, or even in the public sector. So it will do good for the teacher in terms of his performance, actually, at home, in his job, or even eventually if he wants to set up something, or even if he wants to go into government. That entrepreneurial thinking is something that is transferable and that exists in all of these spaces. So in a way, he's actually doing good to himself, but also to the people that he chooses to serve or he wants to serve. So it's a win-win, basically. It's just that it's something that is non-conventional at the moment. And think about it, every sector and industry has innovated and has moved forward and has become more economic driven. So why not education and why not the teacher? So this is what I would say to any teacher that is wondering whether this is in line with what they have sworn to serve or to provide to the society. Yeah.
Yes, very interesting point you raised. I know I promised to only ask you 2 questions, but I'm a teacher myself, and I'm really passionate when I hear this topic, especially when you speak on transferable entrepreneurial thinking, because I know there's been a lot of attack when people talk about entrepreneurial thinking with education. People will say, "Are you trying to commodify education? Are you trying to teach children to be cutthroats, to be to be capitalist, right?" So, there will be teachers listening, right? And there's a lot of teachers, if you're listening, you're actually welcome to join us on this webinar and learn about, entrepreneurial thinking in education. But I want you to really speak to teachers, right? So what you mean when you say transferable entrepreneurial thinking, and if this can be a problem in the long run where there is a problem with capitalism, like that like I raised. Yeah. So, what is your response to that?
Well, first, I would like to say that capitalism is not a problem, actually. It's not a bad thing as it's being portrayed. Everybody deep within ourselves, we are capitalists. It's just that, are you being a capitalist by serving people, or you're just being capitalist by just serving your self-interest? And if you do it the right way, meaning the entrepreneurial way, rather than just being a businessman, how some people are, then you'll be serving people. And to that, it's just like the other point that I made. You can't escape it. It's an economic world. It's not just a social world, but it's an economic world.
Yes.
Money matters. Finance matters. Resources matter. And for us, what we have tried to do in order to solve this dilemma that you are saying, as far as what the teacher also does or what the education system does, is that there's no compromise even on the academic side of things. And we've simplified it in a way that it's easy to not just understand, but also to use for yourself, and also to basically, as I said, serve the bigger society or community. So we focus on 3 things for us. It's about influence, value, and profitability. And so if you're a teacher, an educator that is teaching mathematics, what should be in your head is, how do I improve influence, value, and profitability
for your
my
student, yes,
of myself, but also for the students, basically, because that's what will matter at the end of the day. And so if you are teaching mathematics, it's like, how does mathematics add to those 3 things within the national curriculum? Obviously, you shouldn't compromise the national curriculum, but how do each of the topics in the national curriculum add to those 3 things, basically, whether it's for himself, for the student, or for the institution, the school that he's working for? And that's basically, in a nutshell. I can go more into detail, but that's just a hint of how we approach it.
Yes.
And the methodology to achieve it also is different. Not different in a bad way, but different in a better way than what we see right now, which is just lecturing. There's another method to actually achieve it. And then the assessment side also, beyond just sitting you're shading A, B, or C, or you're doing essay part, there's something beyond that also, which enhances that entrepreneurial thinking. At the end of the day, when you come out of it, you're actually a better person, and you are a better educator, and your institution, the school you work for, is a better institution. The country where you are serving at, or where the school is existing, or any locality, whether it's a state, continent, or wherever, is also better, And we have points that we can prove this thing that we're saying, and we've done a lot of research before we developed it. So we're very confident that this will be the way to go in the near future.
Wow, interesting. I'm sure you have a lot more to say about entrepreneurial thinking in education. And teachers, if you are home wondering, what is the next step I need to take in my career to better my, professional life, my personal life, and also to add value to my school, to my curriculum, to my assessment, to my students, I think you really need to attend this webinar. It's going to happen on the 28th of October at 5 p.m. So hope to see you there. So you're on your way to travel for the African Investment Investment Summit 2022, and you are going to be on a panel called An Overview of Investment Opportunities in Nigeria on October 10th at 3:30 p.m. West African time. So I want to ask you, how are you preparing for the summit? And what is it like to be? I know you were an educator, you're an entrepreneur, now you're a global speaker. I mean, what's it like?
Yes, this is very humbling, if I can say that, simply because of the caliber of people that AFSIC are inviting to London for the conference.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a 2-day conference. Interestingly, we also just had a global conference, the Tongston Entrepreneurial Education Summit, TEAS 2022, and we had similar situation. Just that for us, it was highly virtual, except for day one. And we tried to bring in so many people from different industries. And this is what I see AFSIC also doing at a bigger stage in a more international location in the UK. So I've seen so many of the profiles of people that are coming. We have investors coming, we have business people, we have government or public sector type of people. We have also prospective entrepreneurs coming, So it's something that I'm very much preparing for, so that I make sure that the little time that I'm given to speak with others, specialists and professionals and other industry players, that the audience gets the best value out of it and they take something that will really impact their life. And as I said, it's very humbling because sometimes you think you are doing well wherever you are until you go to a global stage and you see what other countries and other industry players, other business companies are doing, But as I said, it's just a continuation for me of what we've started during TEAS 2022. And the discussion continues, and Africa needs to rise, And I'm glad that we are making this in an international stage. So that in case if people even are worried about coming to Africa to bring in investors and things like that, that obstacle is not there anymore. So I'm very happy. London is a major financial district. I think that's what I would like to say about it. And I very much encourage people, if you can't go, you can't travel in person, I think there's a virtual access to it. Do participate, learn as much as you can, take as much as you can, and also pick ideas in terms of what other people are doing in Africa, so that you also build your enterprise to a level where it can attract foreign investors. But what's most important is that you dictate the narrative. They just come in to fuel it or to align with your own directive. So this is very much important, so that at the end of the day, it's Africa that develops, it's Africa that grows, and so many opportunities, but not enough talent or people or financiers to move these ideas of Africa forward. So at the end of the day, for me, it's Africa and Africans should win and move forward, whether it's Africans in diaspora or even within the continent. It's about them and their businesses and their communities, their societies.
Yes. Yes, just so many powerful points you raised there, like Africa being the new center of investment opportunities. Engineer Bello himself is also the CEO of Tongston Entrepreneurship Group, which is a Pan-African group. So I have a question to ask. What is Tongston Holdings' role in investment opportunities in Nigeria and, dare I say, Africa as well?
Yeah. So if you ask anybody right now, as far as investment in Africa is concerned, they'll tell you two things. Africa has very high agricultural resources and they have high mineral resources. And so when people come from outside of Africa, they want to key into these spaces. But for me, and Tongston as well, we focus on only 5 things. Mainly 4. The 5th one is just an added advantage to the 4 that we're doing. So for us, the opportunities are in education. Also, the opportunities are in enterprises. And when I say enterprises, I mean medium, micro, and small enterprises, whether it's in the non-profit, private, or even in the public sector. Because right now, governments are also building enterprises, almost like private sector. And then number 3, in the media space, I think the media space is not really explored as it should be. And unfortunately, the media space is also doing so much copying of what's going on outside of Africa, but
and then,
there's a way.
Yes, and there is also the politicization, if I can call it that, of the media.
Yes, but I think it can be done well. I don't think we have reached the limit on that.
Right.
Then on the financial space, some of the big companies that have been invested in the past few years have been fintech companies. Speaking of fintech, technology is the fifth element, which is, as I say, is the subtle aspect of it, which I think the talent in Africa is rising up to. Even us in Tongston, there are projects we want to do within the tech space, but finding the talent to do it here is a struggle, and so it's better that we are the talent that build those tech projects rather than us exporting the projects to non-Africans or people that are not mainly having the drive or interest of Africa to build those things, So I would say those are the 5 things I think where Tongston sees opportunities at. And these are the 5 things also I'll be talking about during AFSIC, because you have to walk the talk, I don't want to talk about other things that we're not into and preaching it, and yet we are not being practitioners in it. So this is why I'll focus on what we're doing, where our interest is, but also what we understand best. So for me, those are that. But if any questions regarding other industries come up during AFSIC, then I'll give my best approach to it, or my best answers to it, only from the perspective of Tongston and maybe myself to a certain extent. Yes,
because I was about to ask that question that you were, kind of running away from. So it's very interesting that you said that, Tongston dwells on these 5 pillars. You mentioned enterprise, you mentioned education, business, media, finance, as opposed to where the focus has always been for Africa, which is, natural resources, crude oil, gold, all that. So I want you to just talk to the audience about some investment opportunities that there are in Africa, Do you just share that with us?
I don't want to give too much out yet.
Right.
Because I said this is just a hint of what's going to happen in AFSIC. But I will say human resource of Africa, there is a very big opportunity there. And I don't know whether it's because I'm in the education space, but education is also under human resource. Because we have so much high population. Look at Nigeria, over 200 million apparently, and other parts of Africa. And yet, majority of that population are young people. So they are young people and they are human beings, right? So they have this. The brain is an asset. I always like to say the brain is a problem-solving machine. It's just that you don't see it or you can't touch it. It's something that we call intellectual property, right? And this is why I'm saying the human resource side of things, because of population and the youthfulness, but also the resilience that we have. There's a state in Nigeria here, Lagos, where they say if you can survive in Lagos, you can survive
anyway.
So we do have the potential to actually do great things. So I would say the biggest opportunity for me is in the talent or human resource that exists in Africa. But you can explore that in different ways, whether it's education, whether it's other talent spheres like in sports and entertainment and all of that, or it's just in terms of labor force, just like how now many of the tech companies in the US, they export their tasks basically, or projects to Vietnam and China and places like that to build the things that they have. So I would say this is the biggest opportunity that I have. This is the only one I can give away right now. I don't want to talk about the rest, so that basically I'm encouraging people to come to AFSIC, whether virtually or in person, to also see some of those opportunities being explored or discussed.
Yes. Thank you so much, Engineer Bello Tongo, for that interesting conversation that we have. If you want to listen more to Engineer Bello Tongo, you can listen to the overview of investment opportunities in Nigeria and Africa on October 10th at 3:30 p.m. West African time. And also to notify you whether you are a parent, a teacher, anybody who's interested and crazy about education, you can join the webinar, which is going to happen on the 28th of October, which is World Teacher Celebration Month. Join the webinar on the 28th of October at 4 to 5 p.m. West African time, whether you are a parent, a teacher, anybody who is crazy about education. We're going to have Engineer Bello Tongo, who is going to be talking about entrepreneurial thinking in education. For more information, click the link in the description below.